family. So we believe in utilizing a family model system where we are not only working with the child, but we also have to work with the family as a whole. And so Stand Up Speak Out, what makes us, I like to say, unique and different is that we utilize art and different forms of art therapy components to help those who have experienced trauma process what they have experienced, work through that hard reality of what they have experienced and what they can't always articulate in a counseling session. So through using art, poetry, dance, music, different forms of creativity allows them an opportunity to release and even think about processing what that experience looks like. So when you can't necessarily tell a counselor, well, this is how I feel, or this is how this made me feel, through art and through color, through painting, through music, through even rap, songs, poetry, you can make it, you can share that experience through utilizing metaphor, simile, or different colors of paint to allow you to be able to explain it when you can't always put it into words. And so for the young people that we work with, we like to use art as an element to help those ultimately find their healing, begin their healing journey. We pretty much primarily work in Durham and Wake County, but we do have support groups throughout different counties in North Carolina. We provide what is called Girls Speak Out, which is for our young girls ages 10 to 17. And then we have what is for the adult women called the Brief Life Sister Circles, and those are throughout North Carolina. We also offer individualized one-to-one direct services, which is therapeutic coaching, and we provide that to individuals who may just need more individualized attention, and that typically is when group setting is not the best for that individual, then we work with them one-to-one with personalized goals that are centered around what they have experienced and the aftermath of what they've experienced. So oftentimes, if a person has experienced trauma, sexual abuse, or domestic violence, there is phases of what they have gone through, and it looks different for everyone. So you may have a child that's dealing with anxiety, dealing with sleeping patterns at night, PTSD, depression, the list can go on, and it looks different for each individual. And so we work towards working with these young people on a one-to-one basis, providing hope, resiliency, and ultimately healing. And so once they're stabilized and in a place where one-to-one services, we've been working with them typically, 3 to 4 months, they're feeling better and in a better place to work in a group setting, then we will transition them to our group, which is Girls Speak Out. And in group settings, the reason we do that is because when you have experienced different forms of trauma, it feels better, and it's also a way of healing and connecting when you fit in a space with other people who also can identify with what you're experiencing. And so that's a short kind of version of the work that we do here at Stand Up Speak Out. And since, it looks a little different now, Rob, and Jes, it looks different with what we're doing now, and it has become... We've had to get creative a little bit in how we do our work now, but it has worked. We have successfully transitioned to remote services, so now we're offering those same group sessions virtually, as well as we're offering those same group sessions, our one-to-one services virtually as well.
Well, I'd love for you to speak more to that too, Monica. Like when we were saying earlier, those quotes from that CNN article about communities across the country are seeing a higher volume of referrals. Are you seeing that happening with your work as well? And if so, just talk us through what you're witnessing, the problem that you're up against now being exacerbated by this crisis. Is that something you're seeing on the ground with your work?
Yeah, so even Stand Up Speak Out, we've been around for 16 years. I still consider us a very small organization compared to our partners like DCRC, Interactive Wake County. But even those partners, I have even talked to some of the leaders, and they're seeing an increase, for us on a small scale, we're also seeing an increase. We transitioned our services virtually on March 11th, moved and was ready to go with our virtual group around that second week, March 16th. Well, in that time frame that we transition our services, we've already received 6 referrals. And we typically, for us, we might get referrals in the month. We might get, maybe 1 or 2 in a month from some of our partners. Well, in just that 1 week, we received 4, and then the other 3 came in within a few days. We're not big organization like some of the others, so like they may receive referrals from multiple people, but just in this small time frame, yes, it has increased. We already have a caseload that we're working with of individuals one-to-one, and then we have these particular intakes that have come in. So even an organization that is, small organization like Spann Speak Out, we're seeing that increase as well. And we're seeing the need for more folks that are in need of support, not just individuals who may be experiencing domestic violence right now, but individuals who have experienced domestic violence in their life, and being isolated is causing triggers.
Wow. Yeah. First of all, you do a lot, Monica. The list just was incredibly complex and full and comprehensive. And so thank you for the work that you're doing with our families. I was sharing with Rob the other day, the CNN article that, half the world is on stay at home. And so this isn't just a United States concern. This is a global concern. And they're really putting fail-safes in place across the world around how do you make sure that those who are susceptible to abuse have some way out, something that they can say or do, right? And so they were saying on CNN that in Europe that they have instituted these code words to go to pharmacies.
Yeah,
and
I saw that article too.
Did you see that? I'm just wondering... Just wondering if this has been a topic of discussion in your field for others, like you mentioned, your other partners. Is there something that's happening around that now here in the U.S. for our community to be thinking about, or do you think there'll be something down the road that'll be similar to that?
I definitely think it's a conversation within our organization because we are offering these services virtually. And so we're trying to figure out a way that if there is a child who is in a home where there is abuse, they're witnessing abuse, how do we figure out how to navigate that to know that something is happening? So we're already having those conversations. There is conversations across different leaders, here locally as well about what do we do, especially because even if we're offering it virtually, we're not right there with them. How do we stop or try to get that person help? So those conversations are coming, and then trying to figure out, because even if you're on a chat, there has to be a way or some form of code that you can say that this is happening, because if the abuser sees that, then we might just be a moment too late to be able to get to that person. So definitely, that's a conversation that's happening.
Okay. Well, keep us posted, Monica, because I find the way to be able to pull levers around keeping our community safe really interesting. And times like this, we have to make it up as we go. And to think that in Europe, they have a code word that can be activated at local pharmacies. That's how they're doing it, that a woman can walk into a pharmacy, say this code word, and the pharmacist knows, okay, there's abuse at the home. I would imagine that when the next week or so, there's going to be something similar to that here in the U.S., and we'll want to make sure that our listeners can go to our podcast notes and can see it. So if you can share anything like that, we would want to keep it in the forefront. And for our listeners, Google it. Stay on top of this information because it's relevant and it's in real time. And so we need to make sure that we're protecting one another and having the resources that we need. Now, with all of that said, Monica, so let me get back to what you do here. I'm always fascinated too by, what is it that keeps people going? Like, we're in some weird times and it's really easy to just kind of pretend like it's not happening. And I think many of us are just, sitting back, kicking back in our homes, who have the luxury to stay at home and doing whatever. But you're not doing that. And Rob set that up so well. You are like a warrior out there, girl, just doing it, figuring out how to make a virtual, making sure your people have everything that they need and have access. So why? Why are you doing that? What fuels you in the morning? Why are you more determined now than ever?
My fuel comes from being a survivor of both domestic violence and sexual abuse, all that happened before I was 15 years old. So that is what fuels me. I'm always reminded of the little girl who didn't have a stand-up speak out. And I'm reminded of the girls that I have that I've heard their testimonials. I've heard their testimonies of why Girls Speak Out is important to them, even recently with them being virtual and how this has helped them to bond and it has given them an outlet. Hearing from parents who are appreciative of the services that we're providing, that we were providing before COVID-19, and how it's helped their child and how they see the change in the behaviors in their children. And that is what keeps me going. And in a time like this where the uncertainty of how long we'll be isolated, I feel like we have to do something. If all we can do is make sure that child can get on with us, or that parent that has experienced abuse or maybe experienced abuse have a sister circle that they can get on virtually. And perhaps if something is going on, somehow we may know, they will say it in code word or whatever, and we will be able to hopefully prevent another life gone as a result of domestic violence. Just to kind of bring this all together so you guys know, every year we do a, candlelight visual to honor those who and remember those who've lost their life to domestic violence. It's April the 3rd. Already this year, it's been 20 homicides of domestic violence this year. Last year, it was 56. I feel like I have to keep pushing. We got to do something, and not just myself, but just leaders across is doing this work, because that number, if this is where we're at in April, what will this look like, in June? What will this look like in July? And one of those intakes that I received just in this last week is 4 kids, and all 4 of them have lost their mother to abuse. They've been witnessing this abuse all of their life. Can you imagine that? And so this work is so important, and more important to put this in the forefront of people's minds that are not even thinking about domestic violence. We're thinking about, which is very important too, the healthcare workers, the vulnerable population. But I think people are missing that a part of that vulnerable population is the child witnesses of abuse. The vulnerable population is the victims of domestic violence. And so it's important for us to stay putting this information in the forefront of people's minds, and then also trying to be a support in some way for these individuals that need that help.
Bless you. Bless you. Yes.
Well, you talk about being the support, Monica, of which you so clearly are and have been for over a decade, almost going on 2 decades now, and your work is now needed more than ever in this season. I don't think we mentioned it earlier, but this article we referenced earlier from CNN talks about the tie with unemployment to domestic violence, and how that we're experiencing record unemployment. At the time of this article, it said 3 million, and now it's over 6 million filed for unemployment, where the previous record was 600,000, and that was in the Great Depression. And so, when you're talking about your referrals, we're only on the front end of this pandemic. What can we do? And Jes and I are asking that personally, of course, but also asking on behalf of everyone listening right now to say, we know that what you are doing right now, you couldn't do this work alone before COVID. You need people to champion what you're doing, because you're not a one-woman show. Although you are incredibly gifted and do a lot on your own, you should not and cannot do this on your own. How can we rally around you as you are rallying around these kids and these families right now?
Well, we definitely need the support, from the community. One, being able to put the information out there so people understand the seriousness of this vulnerable population, becoming a sustainer of Stand Up, Speak Out, making a contribution to our organization if you can. I know it's hard times for a lot of people, but if you can make a donation and become a sustainer, becoming a monthly sustainer for us would be very beneficial. If you can only make a one-time gift, making that one-time gift can be also beneficial to help us to sustain the programs that we have. We are doing multiple sessions throughout our week and individual sessions, and my staff has already increased their time and their hours. Most of my staff work on a part-time basis, so they've already begun to increase and even give, their in-kind hours to kind of help in any capacity that they can to keep, our groups going. So any way that individuals can support us in these hard times, it would definitely make a difference in helping us to sustain and be able to continue to push through this pandemic. What we don't want is we don't want to have to turn someone away and say, oh, well, we can't help this individual. That's what we don't want. And however a person can help, if it's $25 is all you can make